A telemarketer called a home, and a small little voice picked up the phone. Hello? Hello, what's your name? My name's Jimmy. Well, how old are you, Jimmy? I'm 4. Was your mom home? No, Mom isn't home. Okay, is your dad home? Well, Dad's home, but he's busy. Well, is there anybody there I can talk to? Well, the police are here. Well, can I talk to them? No, they're busy too. Well, is anybody else there, Jimmy? The firemen are here. Can I talk to them? No, they're busy. Jimmy, all these people are at your house and they're all busy. I can't talk to any of them. What are they all doing? He says, they're looking for me. Jimmy was hidden. Jimmy was unseen. This evening we're going to talk about some of the things that Paul said are unseen that we really need to fixate on. I'm going to start in 2 Corinthians 4. I'm going to spend most of my time in there. I'm going to skip to 11 at some point and back and forth. But if you stay in 4, you're going to be able to keep up pretty good. And I think all the scriptures are going to be on the screen behind me. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:1, therefore, since through God's mercy we have this ministry, we do not lose heart. Well, what does that mean? We do not lose heart. I think one of the things Paul is saying to us, this is supposed to be encouraging to me. You know, not everything that happens to us on this side of heaven is pleasant, is it? Matter of fact, there's a great deal that happens to us on this side of eternity that's not pleasant. And Paul is encouraging us not to lose heart. It's amazing to me that Paul is the guy that does this. Because Paul is cheerful, he is encouraging, and he had a lot of struggles in his life. And we know that he had a lot of hardships because he outlines them in 2 Corinthians 11, 24 through 27. I'm just going to read that to you. 5 times I've received from the Jews 40 lashes minus 1, 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false brothers. I've labored and toiled and gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst, and I've often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Now, I don't know everybody's walk in here. But if yours has been a fifth of what Paul's is, raise your hand. If anybody had a reason to lose heart, it was the Apostle Paul. Yet he is one of the biggest cheerleaders in Scripture of the Christian faith, saying, do not lose heart. Hang in there. Matter of fact, to the point where when I read something like 2 Corinthians 11, 24 through 27, and then he says, do not lose heart, and then I think about my life and some of the things that discourage me, I'm outright ashamed of myself. I'm outright ashamed of myself. I don't care to tell you. How can Paul be so cheerful? Did his football team never lose? How does Paul maintain this level of encouragement? We don't throw the word zeal around anymore, but this a level of excitement, this a level of zeal, this level of rejoicing. And I think the answer is pretty simple. I think we can learn 2 things from Paul that can help us in every day in our Christian walk. Because Paul says we need to look at what is unseen and we need to look at what is ahead. Verse 18, we're back in 4 now. Fix our eyes not on what is seen, but in what is unseen. Church family, we are very affected by what we see. It is the reason that visual advertising works so well. People will pay ridiculous amounts of money during the Super Bowl to get their product in front of you so you can see it. Because we're affected by what we see. So much so, I think, in our society today, that probably we usually do the opposite of what Paul says here. We focus on what we can see. We fix our eyes on what is seen, not on what is unseen. And the truth is, so many Christians, one of the real blessings that you have in ministry is you get to be with so many Christians at the end of their life, at the end of their walk. Some of the most encouraging things I can tell you that have emboldened my faith have been at the people's side when they were just about ready to start eternity. But unfortunately, sometimes as Christians, that's the first time we start thinking about heaven. That we start thinking about the things that are unseen. And the truth of the matter is, we may find ourselves in heaven tomorrow. Nobody has any guarantees. I'm not trying to scare anybody, young people, but nobody has any guarantees. You know, I tease my friends all the time. I say, look at me, You think I'm living the 90? I'm not living the 90. Look at me. So, I can encourage myself, and I can be an encouragement to other people if I'm simply looking at what's unseen and pointing people toward what is unseen. But we get distracted, and we get distracted with things that in and of themselves they sometimes are even blessings. They are things that matter. I'm reminded of the story of the farmer, and this farmer, he tells his wife the night before that he's going to go out. He goes, I'm going to go plow that field tomorrow. That field I've been meaning to plow, it's getting plowed tomorrow. So he gets up the next morning and he heads toward his tractor. But he remembers his tractor needs oil. So he detours from his tractor and heads toward his shop to get the oil. But he never gets to the shop because he looks over and the pigs haven't been fed. So he detours from the shop and he heads toward the pigs. But you know what? The pig feed is in the storage barn. So he detours from the pigs and he heads toward the storage barn. But he never gets to the storage barn because on his way to the storage barn, he sees a big pile of wood that his wife has asked him to bring inside the day before. Husbands, you know what that means. You've got to go get that pile of wood if you don't get nothing else done today. So you go get the pile. He heads toward the pile of wood. He doesn't get to the pile of wood because there's a chicken walking in front of him that's ailing, and he picks the chicken up, carries it inside, sits down in his living room. His wife said, "If you started plowing that field," he goes, "I've not even got to my tractor." You ever have a day like that? You ever have a day where just life keeps you from focusing on anything spiritual for any amount of time? You set out to do something. So many times as a Christian, I get up and I have the best intentions. I'm going to be Jesus today in somebody's life. I'm going to make a difference. And then it's not 6 o'clock anymore. It's 6:05 and I'm on to something else. Folks, I can avoid that, and we can avoid that if we focus on the unseen instead of the seen. I told you before, some of these things they're legitimate things. They're things that go on in life that I'm not a farmer, but when you consider the needs of being in the ministry, and right now, I am dumb enough that I actually have a stake in 2 houses. I have a stake in a house here, and I have a stake in a house in Benton, Arkansas. So that weighs on your mind a little bit, right? And then the day-to-day things, the bills that come in, and then I want to be a good husband to my wife. I want to be a good grandpa to my grandkids. I want to be a good dad to my sons, so I try to keep in contact with them. And pretty soon I'm like the farmer, intending to do a bunch of great things and never really getting anything done. And those concerns are all legitimate. What about all the things that are seen that in the grand scheme of things just don't matter a whole lot? You know, you see I'm wearing the Marshall Thundering Herd helmet tonight. Boy, I spent a lot of time on Saturdays worrying about the Marshall Thundering Herd. And probably more than I should. Football. I love football. I'm not going to lie to you. I just do, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. But if it gets in the way of me seeing, I'm so focused on it, I can't see the unseen. I need to move it out of the way. I need to put it in its priority. When I add up the things that don't really matter, I've got to take those and I've got to set those to the side. Sometimes that's a lot easier said than done. I'm pretty convinced that the biggest reason that Christianity as a whole seems to be so discouraged in 2015 is we focus on the scene. The scene is really bad. If you don't believe the scene is really bad, I'm going to point out a couple of things to you that Paul points out. We should be the most optimistic and joyous people on the planet. It doesn't seem that way. We're constantly seem to be disappointed. And Paul kind of points out two things that discourage us. One is our ailing body. I'm 50, and from 20 to 30 didn't seem like a big deal to me. From 30 to 40 seemed like a bigger deal. From 40 to 50, it is like, anybody else experience that? From 40 to 50 was really, and some of you are saying, poor you. But I'm serious, 40 to 50 was, my body really feels like it's 50 years old. And my eyesight, at 40 I had 20/20 vision. And now I'm like an optometrist case study because I wear contact in one eye to read. I don't wear contact in the other eye, so I see close with this eye, I see far away with this eye, and if my eyesight gets any worse, I'm going to have to grow a third eye. I don't hear as well as I used to. Y'all seen those big candles that you stick in the ear and you like one end of it? I'm about ready to try that. That's how desperate I am to hear better. And I'm not as quick as I was. I've never been a sprinter, but people walk faster nowadays, and I have a hard time keeping up with them. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. My hearing isn't what it used to be. My pace isn't what it used to be. But Paul says in verse 16 something that's very, very, very encouraging to me. It says, the temporary, the things we see will not stay that way forever. Paul reminds me that I might be weak physically. I might even be dying physically. But inwardly, the part of me that matters is getting better. God is refining me. He's making me more and more like His Son, if that's what I want. If that's what I pursue, if I don't concentrate on the scene so much. Outwardly, I'm wasting away. Some of you might laugh at that. But the real me, the thing that makes Toney, the thing that makes you, your soul, is growing more and more like Christ. So on the outside, the scene doesn't look any better. I don't know many people that look better at 60 than they did at 30. There may be a few out there. But as a Christian, that ought to be my goal. Spiritually, I need to look better at 40 than I did at 30, and at 50 than I did at 40, and 60 than I did at 50. Because I'm growing closer and closer to what God wants me to be, living in His plan. Over the years, God has molded me. Sometimes He molds me like the potter. They talk about the gentle potter. You see the potter's wheel. And then sometimes He's used a hammer to mold me. That's what He's had to use to get me where I needed to be. The psalmist in Psalm 73:26 describes it this way: my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. God is working in my life in ways I cannot see. The unseen hand of God has been there to guide me and prepare me for heaven. How many of you have had a thought this week that God is preparing me for heaven? Don't feel bad if you haven't, because there's times that I don't either. Now, I wonder what I'm being prepared for a lot. But it's always on this side. It's always in this life. What's God prepare me for in this life? God's preparing us for heaven. He wants to spend eternity with us. He wants to have an eternal relationship with you and with me. Paul says we need to look more at the unseen, the work of God in our hearts and in our minds and in our lives. And the physical can sometimes be a distraction to that. But he also mentions one more thing that can be a distraction for that. The trouble we see around us. And in other words, I would describe that as the 24/7 news channels. I think that's what Paul had in mind when he wrote this. Because if you are having a good day, let's say you wake up and you're having a good day, man. I'm having a great day. You want to ruin that? You want to pull the plug on your good day? Go sit in front of the TV and watch the 24/7 news channels for about half an hour. That'll do it to you. That'll ruin your day. Church family, if we focus too much on it and we feel sorry for ourselves because we live in a world full of troubles, it's going to mess you up. It just is. Paul encourages not to feel sorry for yourself, but look at what is unseen. Look ahead. Remember what's ahead. Talking about the trouble we see, Paul says this in verse 17, but they are light and momentary. They will pass away, and in fact, these light and momentary troubles serve a good purpose. They are achieving for us the eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Job 23:10 says this, when he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. I need to look at heaven more. I need to look ahead. I need to look at the final product. I need to look toward eternal glory that I think God has prepared for me and for you. I think when my perspective is an eternal one, whatever hardships and whatever difficulties that I'm going through, and however way Satan is trying to distract me, and if you don't believe Satan is trying to distract you, I definitely want to study with you about that. He's trying to distract us. But I can look past him. I can look past him on into glory, on into eternity, and see what God's got waiting for me. What can Satan throw at me that's going to compare with that if that's my focus? There's nothing he can throw in front of me that's going to trip me up if I just keep my final destination in mind. Everything we experience, I believe, on this side of heaven prepares us for the other side. And when we have that perspective, I think that we're seldom going to be discouraged. Everything is working in accordance to God's plan for our lives. Paul finishes in verse 18, we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Anyone here love camping? Anybody here like to camp? Just one. Well, I'm talking to you. I don't like to camp. Not even a little bit. Matter of fact, the electric flickers at my house and I got to reset the clocks. That's camping. The cable goes out. That's roughing it. And I've been tent camping one time in my life, and that was one time too many. But you know, church family, every one of us, we are living in a tent. You ever think about that? Every one of us, this shell, this thing that, man, if I wake up in heaven and I have this, I'm going to be real disappointed. I really am. I'm going to be the first guy at the complaint window thinking, what are you thinking, Lord? This tent, this temporary thing, my tent may be a big top, because that's the biggest tents there are, and the clowns are inside of them. But every one of us, we're living in a tent right now. It's a temporary structure. Nobody wants to stay in a tent forever. Can you imagine living forever in a tent? Wouldn't be very comfortable. You want to go home. You want to go to your house. How long do we live in this tent? Psalm 90:10 says the length of our days is 70 or maybe 80 years if we have the strength. Yet their span is but trouble and sorrow, for they pass quickly and we fly away. I'm looking for that day we fly away. I'm looking forward. And I've told you guys this before when I was here 3 years ago. My prayer life has changed remarkably as I've matured as a Christian, because I'm going to be flat out honest with y'all. I pray for Jesus to come back every night. Every night. I didn't used to pray that way. I would say, well, Jesus, I want you to come back, and I want to go to heaven with you, but boy, I would really love to see Maddie graduate high school first. I'd love to see her get married. Do the things that grandpas think are special. I'd like to see my youngest son get married if there's any candidates in here. But now, when I look at the world and I evaluate where I'm going, I say, Lord, just come now. Just come right now. We're going to fly away one day. We are. One day we're going to pack our tent, this physical body, and we are going to move out. After weathering the storms of life, this tent is going to give away. And we're going to move into a new building, a building built by God, prepared for us. Sometimes I think we've been in this world too long. This is where we think we belong. And that's a scary way to think. We don't belong here. The reason you feel uncomfortable living in this tent is because you don't belong here. You weren't created to be here. You were created for an eternal relationship with God. The Bible tells us that this next life, eternity, heaven, it's a lot more real than this one. You don't believe me? How many things that you see that are deception? How many things do you see that aren't true? With your own eyes, you see them, yet they're not true. Everything God tells you about the unseen is absolutely 100% true. There's not going to be any bait and switch. There's not going to be any deception in advertising. Matter of fact, our minds can't even comprehend how wonderful it's going to be. Whatever your mind comes up with, it's going to be times that by about 100 or 1,000. This evening I'm going to end up with a message from James. This is James 4:14. This is I shared one of my favorite verses with you this morning in Scripture. This is another one. Why you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. And I think Paul's message to us, if he was standing before you today instead of me, he would say, do not live for the temporary. Do not live for the vapor. Do not live for things that's going to be in the landfill in 30 years. Do not live for the seen. Live for things eternal. Live for things that are unseen. Yogi Berra passed away recently. How many of you know who Yogi Berra is? Even if you're not a baseball fan, you probably know who Yogi Berra is because he said so many silly things. I'm not even sure he said them all, but there are a lot of them are attributed to him. Well, he was a catcher for the New York Yankees. He was a great catcher. Matter of fact, the fact that he was a great catcher has kind of been, it's out of people's minds because he's more known for the things he said instead of being a great catcher. But he was a great catcher, played on several world championship teams. He was known, and if any of you have ever played baseball, you know that catchers are the biggest chatterboxes in the world, right? They are talking constantly. Am I right? Just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Right? Why do catchers talk? Trying to distract you? I agree. And a lot of times it works. Well, Barra was a master at it. He would chatter. He would talk into everybody. He'd talk to the batter. Well, Henry Aaron comes to bat back when he was playing for the Brewers. And this is in the World Series. And Yogi says, Hank, you got your bat turned the wrong way. You got the trademark. You need to turn where you can see the trademark. Your bat's the wrong way. Hank, what are you doing, man? Pitcher throws the ball, wham, left field seats. Aaron circles the bases. And as he gets to home plate, he says, Yogi, I didn't come here to read. Church family, let's not get distracted about what we're supposed to be about. It's not complicated. I think sometimes we complicate why we're here, but I think it's pretty simple. We are here to bring souls to Jesus by being Jesus to other people. It's pretty simple to me. So let's keep our eye on the ball and not on the trademark. Let's keep our eye on the unseen and not necessarily the seen. I'm going to tell you, if you start focusing on the unseen, if you start focusing on the spiritual realm and spiritual things in heaven, it's not only going to change your life, everyone around you is going to notice a change in you. Because the things that normally get you upset aren't going to get you upset. The things that normally get you down aren't going to get you down. You know, we sing a song, "This world is not my home." And it really isn't. It really isn't. You were made for an eternal relationship with God. Don't forget it. And then go out and live like it. If you're here tonight and maybe you just need help with what we're talking about, you need help focusing on the unseen, focusing on things eternal. Maybe you're a mom or a dad and you want to do this so your kids see you focusing on the unseen, and it affects them. I want you to come because I want to pray with you. And I want you to pray for me that I do the same thing. I'd love for Debbie to be able to come here and tell you, say, man, Toney's he never gets distracted by the world. And she'd be lying to you. Because I do. But I'm getting better. I'm getting better at it. It ain't going to happen overnight. But I think that if we all together as a church family start focusing on the unseen, start focusing on things eternal, start focusing on things that matter, we can help each other get there. Whatever your need is, come while we stand and sing.